coming up on The World Today. Rishi Sunak to replace Liz Truss as Conservative Party leader and the United Kingdom's new Prime Minister. Germany and Estonia run NATO exercise to protect critical infrastructure. Russia's defense ministry insists West and Ukraine plot dirty bomb scenario to smear Russia. A warm welcome to our viewers at home and abroad. I'm Millicent Wonka in Lagos. The wait is over as Britain's ex-chancellor wins the leadership contest to become UK's Prime Minister. Rishi Sunak was greeted by chairing Conservative Party lawmakers at their party headquarters in London today after he was declared the winner of an accelerated leadership election. The 42-year-old will become the country's third Prime Minister in less than 2 months after his predecessor Liz Truss was brought down after just 6 weeks in office by an economic programme that roiled markets. Mr Sunak, a former finance minister, lost out to Truss in a September vote of the party's national membership following the resignation of Boris Johnson. Mr Johnson ruled himself out of making a rapid comeback on Sunday night, leaving Mr Sunak the all-out favourite. The result relieved some of the nervousness around the outlook for the UK economy, analysts said, but opposition lawmakers have called for an early general election, given the ruling party has now changed its leadership twice since the country last went to the polls. But here's the moment. Mr Sunak looked set to become Britain's next Prime Minister after his rival, Boris Johnson, quit the race, admitting that he could no longer unite their party following one of the most turbulent periods in British political history. The multi-millionaire former hedge fund boss faces one of the most daunting set of challenges tasked with rebuilding Britain's fiscal reputation through deep spending cuts as it slides into a recession, dragged down by surging energy, food and mortgage rates. He will also preside over a party that has bounced from one crisis to the next in recent months, badly split along ideological lines, and a country that is growing increasingly angry at the conduct of its politicians. Meanwhile, Britain's Conservative Party leadership contestant at the time, Penny Mordaunt, withdrew from the race today, saying Rishi Sunak had her full support. In a tweet, she said she was proud of her leadership campaign, but called for party unity. Quote, she said, "We all owe it to the country, to each other and to Rishi to unite and work together for the good of the nation." She said there is much work to be done. Also, Londoners welcomed the news today that Rishi Sunak was set to become Britain's next Prime Minister after his rival and former Prime Minister Boris Johnson quit the race. Some who spoke said they hoped Sunak would bring stability to the country after a tumultuous few months. But for the opposition, a little earlier today, the leader of Britain's main opposition, Labour Party, said that the future Labour government would be limited by a real mess in the British economy. He was speaking during a phone-in radio show. Sir Keir Starmer said that there would be tough choices if his party won the next general election. It was challenged on whether his party's plans to boost public sector spending on health and education. He said that Labour's plans were fully costed and set out a series of tax plans, including closing loopholes for non-domicile tax residents. I said non-dom status is controversial in Britain as it is an option for very few taxpayers and is overwhelmingly used by the top 1% of earners, for whom it can facilitate tax avoidance. When asked by one listener about his climate plan, Mr Starmer condemned recent protests by the Just Stop Oil campaign group, which wants Britain to stop all new oil and gas projects. Let's now go over to our London correspondent, Juliana Langer, who has been following the tumultuous journey of the politics there. Hi, Juliana. It's Rishi Sunak now. Talk to us about the moments leading to the announcement.
Well, good afternoon, Millicent. It's been a remarkable it's been a remarkable comeback, a remarkable political comeback for Rishi Sunak, who's been described as filthy rich and squeaky clean, worth about £750 million. His family have a fortune that we've been told is bigger than that of King Charles III. But I think, generally speaking, if you are a political surveyor, then you would say that he was the right man for the job. I think the odds-on bet this morning was that he would be coronated as Prime Minister, but we know that the Conservative Party isn't united at the moment, and there was last-minute ramblings and a little bit of politicking that could have seen the current House of Commons leader, Penny Mordaunt, battling it out in a four-day contest. That hasn't been the case. Rishi Sunak has been appointed the new Prime Minister. Of course, it's worth pointing out that this is a historic moment for the Indian community, because he is one of the youngest Prime Ministers we've had in modern history, the first British Asian Prime Minister, the first British Indian Prime Minister, and the first Prime Minister of colour. We would like to think that majority of people in the UK would like that, but you know, we can't rule out the fact that there will be some people who are not happy with the fact that an ethnic minority now holds the keys to number 10. He did give a statement. He's given two statements today. One was to the party, and my goodness, there is a huge political hurdle that he has to get over. On Sunday, there were suggestions that Boris Johnson had indeed hit the milestone of 100 MPs that were to back him, but of course he's still under investigation about lying during Prime Minister's questions about Partygate. That's still ongoing, and so he withdrew without publicly saying that he had declared. And then there are so many others within the party that are not really Rishi Sunak supporters. So he spoke to them. He then gave a televised address to the public, again very, very short, about 84 seconds in length. But it is Diwali. It's Diwali today, which is the festival of light for the Hindu community. What an amazing day for him to be declared as Prime Minister just 2 months after he lost a very bruising contest in the summer. It is absolutely remarkable. But of course, we know, Millicent, that he has a lot of problems ahead.
Indeed, and you know, that's really also the big question, if you know he will unite all of you know, the party for all of the United Kingdom. But talk to us about some of the big challenges and this, you know, that he will face: the cost of living crisis, the rise in you know, fuel and what have you. You know, do you think he would gain or the confidence of the market? Do you think that the markets would look better with him at the helm?
Well, if we have a look at the markets, I think, you know, as soon as Boris Johnson pulled out of the race, the British pound rose against the US dollar. It lost some of those gains earlier on today, but it has since climbed, I believe, about 0.15% against the US dollar. So at the moment, a pound will get you just under $1.13. That's all down to Rishi Sunak. We know the markets like stability and certainty, and the fact that we have a new Prime Minister so swiftly after Liz Truss resigned is a good thing. But of course, there are huge issues. You spelled out a couple of them there. The cost of living crisis that has led families on the brink. We've just had flash PMI data today looking at the month of September. It's actually looked at the month of October. PMI gives you a forensic analysis of what the private sector is doing, and we are dropping in output swiftly. We know that business confidence is low. We've seen that from all the surveys that have been taken place. Goldman Sachs, EY, PwC, the IMF, they've all downgraded the UK's economic forecast for next year. It's very likely that we are heading into a recession. September GDP figures don't look good. And also, as well, it seems as if the levelling up agenda, which was a 2019 election mandate that Boris Johnson, you know, campaigned on, is all and well and truly over. So there are big blocks within the country that are not happy. They feel very disenfranchised by Westminster. And I think the massive issue that Rishi Sunak is going to have to face in the coming months, when people are struggling to heat their homes and wages are not going as far as they used to, is the fact that he's a multi-millionaire. He's almost a billionaire. That could potentially be his political Achilles heel, because the general public just don't feel as if he can relate to some of the issues that they're facing. Boris Johnson, whether you loved him or loathed him, he didn't take himself seriously. So when he was up in the north, when he was up in some areas, you know, that aren't doing so well, he was able to kind of tone himself down and get along with them. Can Rishi Sunak do that? I don't think so. We've not seen that from him before. He's definitely going to have a lot of high-level concentration to try and bring down that arrogant kind of perspective people have, a narrative they have of him. So it is going to be really challenging. We are getting a fiscal statement on the 31st of October. This is where we're going to see how government is going to try and bring down debt. That's not going to be very popular with the public, because we're expecting cuts to public funding, perhaps more tax rises. Who knows? It's going to be difficult, but they believe, Conservative Party members believe, that he's the man for the job.
And Juliana, what is the opposition Labour Party's posture with this announcement today?
Well, it's definitely not happy. There has been congratulatory messages sent across the board, because, again, it's important to reiterate that this is a historic moment. He is the first British Asian Prime Minister. Britain has come on leaps and bounds since some of the major issues that we've had in the past. But Sir Keir Starmer, you were just talking about him there. He was speaking on his radio station earlier this morning. Angela Rayner, the deputy Labour leader, she has just called publicly for an immediate general election. We've heard similar calls from Nicola Sturgeon, the First Minister of Scotland. We believe Scotland could potentially vote their way out of the United Kingdom. And then Sir Ed Davey, the leader of the Liberal Democrats, has also said, you know, congratulations, Rishi, but you have no mandate. This is the third UK Prime Minister, Conservative Prime Minister, in so many months. Give it to the people. And if you look at the people and you look at what they're saying, not the vox pops on London Bridge, but actually looking at the polls, you know, more than the majority of those who are being surveyed are saying they want Labour in power. If there was a general election tomorrow, Millicent, Labour would win head and shoulders. So it's going to be tricky. Is Rishi going to be able to shore up the support from the backbenchers enough so they don't push for a general election, or can he keep them, you know, appeased for the next couple of years? It's all to play for, but already we are hearing from Boris Johnson allies like Nadine Dorries, who was the Culture Secretary, saying that there should be a general election. So already we are starting to see the backbenchers, you know, twist the knife in.
So at the moment, Juliana, he is Prime Minister in waiting. When will that handshake happen with Liz Truss?
Well, we'll have to wait and see. Again, we are in unprecedented times. The word, gosh, you know, I should have that word printed on my forehead, Millicent, but it is unprecedented times. I've heard that King Charles III will be coming down to London, I believe, in Buckingham Palace to anoint Rishi Sunak as Prime Minister. We believe there will be a cabinet reshuffle tomorrow, so he's going to pick his top team, who is in, who is out. That is going to be another big sentiment here in the UK to see who is his top cabinet. Is Boris Johnson going to be coming back? Again, we'll just have to wait and see. But PMQs on Wednesday is a big day, and I think it has been just so terribly, terribly stressful and tense for Liz Truss over the past couple of weeks. She only managed to do 3. I don't think it's in her best interest to embarrass herself anymore and go up against Keir Starmer on Wednesday. So it could be Rishi Sunak. It could be, and that is going to be explosive.
We're looking forward to those developments. Thanks always, Juliana Lainka, our London correspondent. Well, let's tell you more about Britain's next Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, who was born on the 12th of May, 1980. Rishi Sunak was previously appointed Chancellor of the Exchequer from the 13th of February 2020 to the 5th of July 2022. Now, he was previously Chief Secretary to the Treasury from the 24th of July 2019 to 13th of February 2020 and Parliamentary Undersecretary of the State at the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government from 9th of January 2018 to 24th of July 2019. He went to Winchester College and studied politics, philosophy and economics at Oxford University. He was also a Fulbright Scholar at Stanford University, where he studied for his MBA. And we understand where he met his wife. For his political career, Mr. Rishi was elected Conservative MP for Richmond, York in May 2015, served as Parliamentary Private Secretary at the Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy from June 2017 until his ministerial appointment at the time. Mr. Sunak spent his professional career before politics and business and finance, working internationally. He co-founded an investment firm working with companies in multiple geographies. He then used that experience to help small and entrepreneurial British companies grow. More of his roles in government include Chancellor of the Exchequer from 2020 to this year, Chief Secretary to the Treasury 2019 to 2020, Parliamentary Undersecretary of the State 2018 to 2019. He is married with 2 young daughters. He will be the youngest UK Prime Minister in modern history at the age of 42 years. And away from British politics to Russia's invasion of Ukraine, now in its 243rd day. Russia's defense ministry has claimed that it has information that Ukraine is plotting the detonation of a so-called dirty bomb or a low-yield nuclear device. The commander in charge of Russia's nuclear, biological and chemical defense, General Igor Kirillov, echoed remarks by Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu, who warned Western and Turkish counterparts over the weekend of a Ukrainian conspiracy to deploy a dirty bomb. Speaking in Moscow today, General Kirillov said the purpose of such a provocation was to accuse Russia of using weapons of mass destruction in the Ukrainian theater of war. He added that the government in Kyiv wanted to terrify the local population to increase the exodus of refugees to Europe and present the Russian Federation as a nuclear terrorist. General Kirillov said Ukraine had the industrial and scientific know-how, as well as enough stock of nuclear material to produce a dirty bomb. Western countries accused Russia today of plotting to use a threat of a bomb laced with nuclear material as pretext for escalation in Ukraine, as Moscow evacuated civilians from the southern city in anticipation of a major battle. With Ukrainian forces advancing into Russian-occupied Kherson province, Russian Defense Minister phoned Western counterparts to tell them Moscow suspected Kyiv of planning to use the so-called dirty bomb. Meanwhile, in a joint statement, the foreign ministers of France, Britain and the United States said they had all rejected the allegations and reaffirmed their support for Ukraine against Russia. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said last night that only Russia was capable of using nuclear weapons in Europe. Mr. Zelensky criticized Russian Defense Minister's suggestion in calls to Western counterparts that Ukraine might be preparing to use the dirty bomb and the current conflict, a conventional weapon laced with nuclear materials. He said that Mr. Shoigu's phone call carousel made matters clear. He said everyone understands fully well. They understand who the source of all the dirty things imaginable in the war.
When today the Russian Ministry of Defense sets up a phone carousel and calls foreign ministers with stories about the so-called dirty nuclear bomb, everyone understands everything well. They understand the source of all the dirty things imaginable in this war. It is Russia that started nuclear blackmail at the Zaporizhzhia NPP. It is the trajectory of Russian missiles that goes, among others, over the Ukrainian nuclear objects. These are the Russian troops who have mined the dam and aggregates of the Kakhovka hydroelectric power plant and are blackmailing with blowing it. It is Russia that uses phosphorus munitions, banned anti-personnel mines, and the entire range of weapons against civilian infrastructure.
Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has said that Moscow has asked the United Nations for data on the destination and end consumers for Ukrainian grain exports, saying that corrections to a deal to unblock shipments from Black Sea ports will depend on this information. Speaking at a press briefing broadcast on state television, Mr. Lavrov said this is not just curiosity. The correction or redirection of further actions to implement the grain deal depends on it. Russia in July signed up to a Russia-Turkish brokered deal to facilitate Ukrainian grain shipments that it had blocked since the start of what Moscow calls its special military operation. Russia has since said the deal is not directing grain to the world's poorest countries and cast doubt on whether it will opt to renew it in the future. VOA's Anna Chernikova joins me now from Kyiv. Hi, Anna. First, talk to us about the latest strikes in Ukraine. We understand missiles were fired by Russia and drones used into Ukrainian-held southern town of Mykolaiv.
Good evening. Yes, well, a lot of missiles actually and a lot of drones are used, not only in Mykolaiv, but those in Mykolaiv caused the destruction of a residential building. For the moment, we know about at least 3 people injured. We don't have any information regarding the victims yet. However, the rescue operation was ongoing yesterday as well. And, well, for the moment, again, only 3 people were reported injured. This kind of attacks are unfortunately happening around the country. Also, city of Zaporizhia, city of Kharkiv, Mykolaiv, these cities are constantly under this kind of attacks, and drones also used for the attacks on the critical infrastructure and particularly energy system of Ukraine.
And Anna, you know, apart from, you know, those missile strikes, I must ask, this is flowing from 2 weeks of strikes, including, you know, drones being used for critical infrastructure, energy crisis. I know that there was a sort of rationing of electricity. How has that been going, especially from Friday into the weekend?
Over the weekend, it was another attack, mostly on the west part of the country, and it was quite a shortage of electricity and water supply in the west regions. If we talk generally about the situation, I should say that it is difficult, but it is controlled for the moment. So there is this scheduled shortages of electricity, so people are informed in advance when the electricity shortcut should happen. However, it is not happening in every region. It's happening depending on the particular need. And even, for example, if we talk about the city of Kyiv, some neighborhoods have these shortages, some neighborhoods don't. And this all depends on the particular need of the stabilization of energy system on the particular power line. So it is not happening massively. However, massively in Kyiv, for example, or in one particular city. However, it's happening depending on the need of the region. So if we talk about, let's say, west part, President Zelensky announced that restoration works of the energy infrastructure is ongoing, and technical possibility has been returned for these regions to be connected back to the power lines and power supply. And some of the regions are already have electricity back. Some regions are still waiting. However, it's not complete blackout in those regions. So there is we're talking about more or less time of this electricity shortages. So for the moment, people are asked still to decrease the use of electricity, especially in the rush hours in the morning and in the evening, and especially with the use of all the equipment that people use at home, usually during this hour. So to move basically some of the planned home stuff to the to the times of late in the evening or early in the morning or during the day. So for the moment, again, we know that Minister of Energy of Ukraine has confirmed that 40% of Ukrainian power stations and power entities have been affected by these attacks, and we are talking about at least a half of the energy system in general. However, situation is for the moment under control, but people are getting ready that situation could, of course, worsen if Russia continues this attack, and particularly targeting energy infrastructure.
And Anna, it's also interesting and quite amazing to see, that people, when they see the whole destruction, when it happens, they have to go back, clean up. Emergency units are also trying to clear, and make sure that, they can manage to stay in their surroundings as they are with all of the destruction that we're witnessing. But then talk to us. There's been the phone calls to Western defense. This is coming from Russia, about uncontrolled escalation as a result of Ukraine planning to use dirty bombs. Of course, Kyiv has reacted saying, that it's short of preposterous. What's the mood of people there if indeed things should get, things should get worse? And this is the talk of using nuclear in any fashion in this war.
Well, I should say that, of course, people are, at least here in Ukraine, the mood that people are kind of prepared that Russia would use this play card of nuclear power to blackmail Ukraine and blackmail the whole world. This kind of, as President Zelensky put it, carousel of calls made by Minister of Defense of Russia over the weekend, it proves that basically that Russia is trying to use this as one of their, let's say, points and blackmail points in this war. Ukrainian reaction to this was united with both government and civilian society. So, for example, the Prime Minister of Ukraine suggested UN and International Atomic Energy Agency missions to come immediately and have everything under their control, and to make sure that there is no need to worry about this being done by Ukraine, because Ukraine has neither goal to do this nor capacities to do this. As we know, there is a Budapest memorandum that Ukraine signed when giving up all the nuclear power it had back in the days, and basically this Budapest memorandum, there is a certain obligations by all the sides who signed it. So basically, the Prime Minister of Ukraine reminded that this agreement is still, memorandum is still basically there at the table. So all the countries, except of Russia, of course, because Russia is now a state who started this war, but other countries who signed it should definitely react.
We're still in Rome, where the meeting between two leaders, French President Emmanuel Macron and new Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, had talks, the first and informal. Mr. Macron, currently on that official visit, posted on his Twitter saying the two countries had to continue to work together with dialogue and ambition. Mr. Macron and Ms. Meloni discussed current European issues, including the need to provide quick and common answers to increased energy prices, support for Ukraine, the management of migrant flows, according to a statement from Italy's Prime Minister's office. Now, Mrs. Meloni, Italy's first female Prime Minister, formally took over from Mario Draghi as head of government after she and her cabinet team were officially sworn in on Saturday in Rome, giving the country its most right-wing government since World War II. And elsewhere, thousands of Germans marched in Berlin to show solidarity with protesters in Iran. Aerial views showing a large crowd gathered at the park in the capital, waving Iranian flags in support of protests there, where unrest ignited by Mahsa Amini's death in police custody has continued for weeks, despite a police crackdown. Police estimate 80,000 people joined the march on Saturday. Organizers said Iranians had traveled from the United States, Canada, and all over the European Union. Amini, a 22-year-old Iranian Kurd, died in the custody of a morality police officer after detained for improper attire. Protests erupted at her funeral September 17th in the Kurdish town of Saqqez before spreading across Iran. Rights groups say more than 200 people have been killed in the crackdown. An investigation has begun in Kenya after well-known Pakistani journalist Ashad Sharif was shot dead on Sunday. An initial police report said officers shot him while he was in a moving vehicle in the case of mistaken identity. Sharif was a critic of Pakistan's military as well as a vocal supporter of ousted Prime Minister Imran Khan. The 49-year-old left Pakistan in May after complaining of harassment. He had previously been in the UK and Dubai before traveling to Kenya. It is not known exactly what he was doing in the East African country. Kenya's police watchdog, the Independent Police Oversight Authority, said it had sent its rapid response team to the site of Sunday evening's shooting in Kajiado County near the capital, Nairobi. The team will be investigating the alleged police killing of a Pakistani national. An initial police report about the incident suggests that Mr. Sharif was in a car that officers mistakenly believed to have been stolen. The officers shot at the vehicle when it failed to stop at a roadblock. Well, still in Africa, 9 more people have tested positive for the Ebola virus at Uganda's National Referral Hospital, Mulago, in the capital, Kampala. This brings the number of positive cases at the facility's isolation unit to 14. Health Minister Dr. Jane Ruth Aceng says the positive cases are contacts of an individual from Cassandra, one of the most affected districts, who recently died at Mulago Hospital. There is growing concern that the outbreak could get out of hand as more cases continue to be reported in the capital. Health officials add that there is an ongoing quarantine in the 2 most affected districts of Mubende and Cassandra, but cases have continued to rise. Official figures show there are currently 75 positive Ebola cases in the country. And Nigeria's Consul General in South Africa, Mr. Andrew Edi, has appealed to Nigerians in the country to be calm and law-abiding at all times. This follows a recent spate of shootings involving Nigerians who may have been attacked by fellow Nigerians. One of the victims is a father of 4 who died after being shot execution-style on the street in an area populated by Nigerians called East and West. The Consul General visited the coastal city of Durban after issuing a safety advisory earlier this week. Apart from meeting with community leaders, he also met with the police, where he appealed for more protection to members of the Nigerian community.
Nigeria's Consul General in South Africa, Mr. Andrew Edi, said he had to make that 6-hour journey to Durban, KwaZulu-Natal, following reports of execution-style killings of Nigerians.
In the last 1 week, there have been 3 shootings, which resulted in 1 death, and then the other 2 casualties survived with gunshot wounds.
The visit included meetings with leaders of the Nigerian community in the coastal city to call for calm, as well as the provincial police leadership. Here on Smith Street, an investigating police officer took him through one of the scenes of the crimes, a fatal shooting of a 47-year-old father of 4.
So now sitting by the side, all of a sudden we just hear a gunshot. When we hear a gunshot, when we come out, we find the 2 people with a gun, shooting. People are escaping. Some are falling down, all of a sudden. But I won't say much, but it's a mistake of identity.
Mistaken identity or not, a family is grieving. Interestingly, some of the answers to the puzzle the police is trying to solve lie in what is not being said on camera by eyewitnesses. But the police says investigations are continuing.
We all agreed that there are certain really flashpoints that require added security presence and attention. And he gave us all the assurances that the police command will do that, and we are happy.
Actually, we are still having ongoing investigation to ascertain what had happened. The case of the other one shooting, as you said, we went to the police, they say it's misidentity. So actually, we have not ascertained the full report of what transpired, but we are still engaging to see where we can find a better solution towards all these incidents among the Nigerian stakeholders in KwaZulu-Natal.
As the police strive to connect the dots to what some have alleged could be a cult war among Nigerians, the spanner in the works is that hardly anyone is willing to come forward with much needed information, while the community continues to bleed members. From Johannesburg, South Africa, Betty Dibia, Channels Television News.
And to Australia, where already flooded towns across its east are on high alert after a weekend of heavy rains, with authorities warning a wild weather system could persist until later this week and trigger renewed riverbank bursts. 6 people in the country have lost their lives as the year's 4th flooding crisis in the east entered its 3rd week. New South Wales State Premier Dominic Perrottet urged residents to avoid driving on flooded roads as he reported the death of a woman who was reportedly trying to escape a vehicle stuck in floodwaters near the town of Goagong in the central west.
This morning we received advice of a young woman who has died near Goagong in the central west. And on behalf of the government and the people of New South Wales, can I extend my condolences to the family and to the friends. Currently, there are 122 SES warnings in place. Of those 122, we have 20 emergency warnings, so they are evacuation orders that are in place. So can I stress again to everybody across New South Wales, if there is an emergency order in place, please.
Into Tuesday, as the system moves further south and the system from the west moves across to the east, we will see showers and possible severe storms across parts of eastern Australia, eastern New South Wales. The focus, though, will be on the south coast. The good news is that on Wednesday through to Saturday, the adverse weather conditions will start to abate and we should have a little bit of reprieve out into the weekend.
Finally on the program, Brazilians are paying tribute in Sao Paulo to friends and family members who died of the coronavirus by writing messages on a mural set up on a boulevard to remember the 680,000 people Brazil lost to the pandemic. The South American nation, as of July, had the world's 3rd highest death toll from the disease, which critics of President Jair Bolsonaro called the result of delays in obtaining vaccines and his repeated dismissal of the seriousness of the disease. On the bustling Paulista Avenue, which is closed to vehicular traffic on Sunday, participants wrote messages with red markers on the white mural, some hugging one another as they remembered lost loved ones. Representatives from the Terena and Guarani tribes joined the demonstration, some donning headdresses and black and red face paint. Former President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, who faces Bolsonaro in a presidential runoff vote October 30, has attacked the president's pandemic response while on the campaign trail. Mr. Bolsonaro's supporters say Lula has politicized the issue and argue that the deployment of vaccine was in line with that of other developed countries. May their souls rest in peace. That's our program this evening. Thank you for watching. I'm Millicent Nwaka.